Well, hello there, and welcome back to another of my vlogs, I suppose we could loosely call them. A few weeks ago, I was on holiday down in Cornwall, or the Cornwall-Devon border area, and went to Bude. And while I was there, I took an evening out to, or a night out really, to go and take some astro images. This was my first time to try out the Nikon D750, which I had recently acquired second hand. So I hope you'll enjoy this little vlog, and we'll jump straight into it, and you'll find me just about to hit the beach down in Bude. Welcome to Bude. It's night time, you might have guessed. And I'm here to go, and I hope on the one clear night that we've had this week in 5 nights, I'm hoping that I'm going to go and photograph the Milky Way and some star trails out on the breakwater at Bude. So let's see what I can do. Okay, I'm on the beach and I'm cracking on. So far, I just want to explain a little bit of my setup here, or at least my aims for tonight. At the moment, I think I've got the beach and the breakwater to myself now that the fishermen have gone doing a bit of midnight fishing. It's about quarter to midnight. The moon is rising, and so, but it's a half moon. It's still quite low in the sky, so I've still got an opportunity to do some shots of the Milky Way. And I made a start about best part of an hour ago. There's a nice little geological feature here on the beach that I wanted to get a photograph of and do a little bit of light painting with, so I've done that. I've shot my foreground, and I've shot that with a relatively low ISO of 500, and I think I did about a 2.5 minute exposure, and the aperture on f5, if I remember rightly. Then I've also remembered one or two other settings. Firstly, I've set a manual white balance, or manually set it to daylight, just so that I've got consistent white balance throughout my shots this evening. That'll make it a bit easier, I think, to get a colour match in post-editing when I blend in the sky. So the sky I've shot separately. I've put an ISO of 5000 on that. I've stopped down to f3.2, and I've done that because on this particular lens, if I go full to its widest aperture at 2.8, tend to get, particularly with bright stars at the edges, kind of Space Invader shaped stars. Don't like that really. So f3.2 I'm hoping will cure some of that. And I'm shooting for 20 seconds, which is about the limit, I think, of what I'm comfortable with before I start getting jelly bean shaped stars. I've shot that as a vertical panorama, and so hopefully I'll see a reasonable amount of the Milky Way in there. There's 2 other shots I want to get tonight. The second shot is to shoot along this geological feature. It's like a fold in the rock, and it kind of looks like a tube on the beach. So I'm going to see if I can get that a little bit later at about 1 a.m. in the morning, at which time hopefully the Milky Way should be kind of vertically above that. And then the third shot that I'm after tonight is my first attempt at star trails. So I'm going to have to set the camera up on the breakwater for this, looking straight down the breakwater. And I think this is a great place to do it, inspired by some photography, I think, by a chap called Chris Small. I'll put a link into this if I can find it, who I've seen a similar shot here. I want my own version of this, of star trails looking down the breakwater, which pretty much points due north, and side lit by a rising moon, that might look quite effective. So that's going to be the next thing I'm going to try before the moon gets too high. I'm going to go and have a little go at that. So I'll report back a little bit later and let you know how I've been getting on. Bye for now. Well, it hasn't all gone exactly to plan. It's been a bit of a frustrating evening in many ways. For some reason, the bulb function on my Nikon D750 stopped working in timer mode, and that was a bit of a problem. So that really limited me because I haven't yet got an intervalometer for it, because my one for the D700 didn't fit the D750. Because I haven't yet got an intervalometer for it, that meant I was having to use a 2-second timer for shutter release. And it started off fine, and then partway through the evening it just decided that it wasn't going to play ball anymore, which was really strange. So so that meant I was very restricted really in terms of what I could do. I set up the time-lapse, so not time-lapse, I set up for the star trails on the breakwater, and those images seem to have come out fine, but I have to say that it looks a bit underwhelming so far, largely because the level of movement in the hour and a half or so that I shot just didn't really look that significant. Who knows, by the time we put it all together it might be fine. I did try using and I did use, I think reasonably successfully, my star tracker with the RX10 Mark IV on this geological feature that I talked about earlier, and so it's going to be interesting to see how exactly that has come out. And once I'd done that, I thought, well, I'll try the same thing with the D750 once that had finished doing the star trail sequence. And I think I've actually got better results with the D750. That wouldn't be entirely surprising, with the exception of the fact that once I got above a certain elevation, the weight of the D750 was simply just too much for the star tracker. So I wasn't able to get as many shots in the vertical panorama that I was trying to get. So what I then did was to set up the D750 just on a straight normal tripod without a star tracker, and just shoot things the traditional way, see how that would come out. So just single shots, no stacking on any of this. I'm not going to do any stacking tonight. I've run out of time. It's nearly 3 o'clock in the morning. It's time to go home. So I'll probably do a bit of a close here, but thank you very much for watching. If I've got any decent images, I will show them to you. I'll probably also do a little bit of chat post-production, just to reflect on what I've done this evening and some of the lessons that I've learned tonight. So, time to go to bed, and I'm going to pack up here, and I'll see you all again next time. Bye for now.
Okay, hello again. So, do you know, I learned a lot of lessons that evening down in Bude on the breakwater, and let's see if I can remember a few of them. It all seems a bit of a long time ago now, so I'm going to jog my memory by checking the screen behind me with one or two of the pictures and see what stories come out of those. So here's this first one, and this first image that's on the screen at the moment was taken with the D750, and this is a single image, and if I just switch into develop mode, I can tell you this was taken as a 15-second exposure, f3.2, and an ISO of 6400. And the other thing about this is that it was taken at about 11 o'clock at night, so this was before the moon rose, and that's going to turn out to have been quite significant. So in this image, the Milky Way is relatively clearly visible. We had nice clear skies, and there was too much in the way of glow in the air, so you know it was a nice clear sky. But unfortunately the moon was going to rise in about another 3/4 of an hour from this time. It's actually much darker than it looks in this image, and that's because I did a little bit of light painting with this image as well. And it's relatively clean. This is quite a nice image, really. It's not going to win any competitions, but actually it's one of a series of images that I used to put together a panoramic shot, a vertical panorama with the D750. So that was pretty much the first thing I did when I got to the beach. By the time I put together the panorama, it looks something like this, and I'll show the image at the end for you. But again, as you can see, at this point in the evening the Milky Way was relatively clear. I also then took a shot about an hour later with the Sony RX10, and unfortunately by this time the moon had started to come up, and in any event the Sony would have struggled with this particular image. But again, this is a single exposure. It's 15 seconds. It's a f2.4 and an ISO of 5000. So it's got a wider aperture than I was using on the Nikon, and it's also got, though, a not quite as fast an ISO, and that's largely because I just don't get an acceptable result with the Sony if I go higher than this. It's a wide angle shot at equivalent of 24mm rather. Again, it's relatively clean, and the stars are reasonably sharp, as you would expect with a 24mm image taken for 15 seconds. Now, once the breakwater had cleared, the fishermen had gone home, I was able to set up the D750 to take about 200 shots to set up the star trail. Now, by this time again the moon had come up, so we were starting to get some light on the breakwater. I think I missed my focus on this, really. I should have attempted to put a hyperfocal setting on this. Either that or separately shot the foreground for it, because the foreground, whilst it's cleaned up reasonably well, it's not as sharp as it might be. So I'm a little bit disappointed with that. That was a bit of a missed opportunity, really. Nevertheless, it took these 200 odd shots, and I got a passable star trail shot out of it, which again I'll show you at the end of this video. Sadly, one of the things that the star trails shot has shown up is one of the shortcomings, really, of this lens. So this lens, this is the Tokina, and it's the AT-X Pro 20 to 35mm, and it's an f2.8 lens. The problem with this lens on the D750 is really the weird shaped star artifacts that you get, particularly at the periphery of the image, and also particularly for any stars that are especially bright, or planets particularly. And as a consequence, what you'll see in the star trail shot is that some of the star trails are particularly thick. What else did I do? Right, so this image here, this was taken as a long exposure with the Sony, because on this trip I really wanted to try to compare, if I could, how the Sony RX10 would perform on this sort of shoot versus the Nikon D750. Sadly, by the time I got around to taking this image, the moon was really quite bright, and it pretty much looks like a daylight image. The other problem with this image is that the moon is directly behind me as I'm shooting, and that's meant that the image is just really flat. The lighting is just flat on to this geological feature on the beach here, which is a bit of a shame, because if we'd had some nice side lighting, it could have looked quite striking. I also took a separate exposure for this, for the stars, and this image that's on screen now, if I just go to full screen on that one, so that image there is actually a composite of the foreground shot that I'd taken and a night sky shot that I had taken. Now, the night sky has come out okay, but one of the things that you'll notice from it is that the Milky Way is pretty much missing. I can see from here just very faintly, I don't know if you can pick this up on the screen now, but there is here a very faint outline here of the Milky Way. You can just about see the Great Void here, but it's barely visible, and there are two reasons for that. One is the moon in the sky, and that means that we're just not going to see a clear Milky Way. And the second really is that on the Sony we just haven't got the same level of light sensitivity. But what I am really pleased about with this shot is that the shot of the stars, I'm just going to wait for it to come into focus here. Come on, Lightroom, clear up. There we go. Just zoomed in a little bit there. That the stars, I don't know if you can pick this up, the stars are really, really sharp, and that's because I was using the Move Shoot Move Star Tracker. One of the things I'm particularly pleased about with this image though, despite the fact that I really haven't got a clear sight of the Milky Way and the flatness of the image, etc., is that what it did show is just how sharp stars can be with a long exposure when you're using the star tracker. This was a 104 second exposure, f2.4, ISO 640, and the stars are just absolutely pin sharp. This is one of the few times that I've been able to really nail the focus with the RX10 Mark IV. And it also just shows how good the Move Shoot Move tracker can be when you get it set up right. In terms of setup of the star tracker, I'll probably do a separate video on that at some point. The combination of that shot for the sky and the earlier foreground shot that I had taken meant that firstly I had lots of detail in the foreground was sharp as well, the sky was sharp, and also by the time I put the two together, it meant that I had a really, really sharp image with very, very low noise in it indeed. It's just a shame that the Milky Way isn't visible and that the image is so flat because of the moonlight. The main star of the show that evening really was the sorry about the pun. The main star really was the Star Trails shot, and I'm quite pleased with that, and I'll just pop it on full screen there. And so this is a composite of those 200 sequential shots that were taken. It has required quite a lot of post-processing work, this. So I did my star trails in Photoshop, and I used a technique that I picked up on another channel, and I'm sorry I can't remember the name of it right now, to produce this sort of comet tail effect on the stars, where they sort of gradually fade out towards the tail end of it. Again, that might be worth another video. Let me know in the comments below if you would like to know how I went about creating the star trail shot. I really wish if I had had the presence of mind at the time, I really wish that I had nailed the focus on the foreground and got a foreground shot that I could have used, because it's really just not sharp enough. But nevertheless, as a first attempt to do a star trail, I'm quite pleased with this one, really. So there you go. I think I've waffled on more than enough. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I hope you've got something out of it. If there's any more that you'd like to know about how I've created any of the shots, particularly any of the composite images, in terms of things like stacking, blending your foreground and the sky together, creating the star trail shots, do let me know in the comments. And if there's enough requests for a particular technique, then I may make a separate video about that. Meantime, I'll leave you with some pictures, the traditional inevitable slideshow of images, and say thank you once again for watching. Do like, do subscribe and share this, and I'll look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye for now.